A 23-year-old woman was found deceased in her Maryland apartment, and now almost 4 decades later, police finally know who was responsible. Delores Thompson was living in an apartment she shared with a friend on South Market Street in Frederick, Maryland, and she was last seen late in the afternoon on Sunday, January the 31st of 1988. Now, she was a babysitter, and she had agreed to babysit for someone the next day, which was Monday, February the 1st. And at around 4:30 p.m., the woman that she was supposed to babysit for sent her boyfriend and his sister to check on her. And when they got there, they knocked on the door and no one answered, so they left. But then they returned to the apartment about 8:15 that evening. They noticed that the door was unlocked, so they went in, and they found Delores deceased on her bed. During the initial investigation, Frederick Police Chief Richard Ashton said that there was nothing that would indicate how she died, either on her body or around the apartment. He did say that they could tell she hadn't been deceased for very long prior to their arrival, and that there were no signs of forced entry, but still yet, the death and the scene were treated as a homicide. On Tuesday, February the 2nd of 1988, the medical examiner determined that it was, in fact, a homicide. They said that she had been assaulted and strangled. Now, while the medical examiner did not say exactly what time that she died, we can look at the facts that we have and analytically come up with some sort of window where this might have taken place. So the last time that she was seen was on Sunday, late in the afternoon. And someone went to check on her at about 4:30, knocked on the door, there was no answer, so they left. Then when they came back at 8:15 that same night, the door was unlocked, and they went in and they found her. So here is what we have. When they went to the house at 4:30, did they notice that the door was unlocked? Was the door unlocked? Was she already inside deceased? We do not know any of that information. So all we know pretty much for sure is it happened sometime between the last time she was seen, late Sunday afternoon, and when they showed up at 8:15 the next day on Monday. The friend that Delores lived with was pretty much ruled out from the beginning because he was in the hospital before it happened, when it happened, and then a little bit after it happened. And the hospital staff tried to keep it from him because whatever he was going through, they did not need his heart rate elevated. They did not need him stressed out. So they tried to hide it from him. But eventually his daughter and Corporal Barry Horner told him about Dolores's death because they had to talk to him, and it upset him pretty bad. He described Delores as being someone who just loved living life, and he said she was a people person and she would make friends with pretty much anybody. He also said he had no idea who would have done this to her, but he was confident that the police would get to the bottom of it. So here is another point of analysis that I want to make. I kind of feel like this had to be somebody at this point that she knew, because he was in the hospital. So it almost seems like someone would have to know that she was going to be there by herself. Now, this absolutely could have been random, but the timing to me seems a little bit suspicious, and that there may be more to it than what we think. And when her roommate was discharged from the hospital, he said he had no intentions of going back to that apartment, and he went and stayed with his daughter. Now, if he ever went back to the apartment, we don't know, but who can blame him if he didn't? All of the evidence that was collected was sent for testing available at the time. Now, we have to keep in mind this is 1988. DNA is in its infancy, nowhere near where it is today. Investigative techniques are different. Computer sciences and technologies are different. So they did the best they could with what they had. And they interviewed a whole bunch of people, family, friends, her roommate, even anyone that they knew had come and gone from that apartment in the days leading up to her death. But even with all of their efforts, the case went cold. But investigators never stopped investigating the case. On November the 28th of 2025, Frederick police announced that they had re-examined all evidence and that through modern investigative techniques, equipment, and testing, crime scene specialist Sabrina Swan identified a small section of bedding collected back in 1988 that had never been sent for testing. And this produced a DNA profile suitable for comparison through state and national CODIS databases. Now, if you've watched very many of my videos, this is what I talk about quite a bit. It does not take a large sample with today's technology. It can be something on this bedding, a pair of jeans, a scarf, anything that we cannot even see with the naked eye, but some sort of equipment or even AI can see it, and then it can be sent off for testing because it can be isolated. And that is exactly what happened here. And investigators were able to determine that Calvin Ziegler, whose profile was in the system because he was a convicted offender, was responsible. If you remember just a few minutes ago, we talked about how this was more likely to be someone that she was familiar with or that she knew versus a stranger, because it was too coincidental that her roommate was in the hospital and this took place when she was home alone. Well, according to the original investigator, Ziegler knew Delores Thompson. Now, we don't know how. I could not find how he knew her. But if you have information on that, please let me know in the comments. But they did say that he frequently visited her apartment, and he was among the people interviewed during the original investigation. Now, I know it would be so easy to get mad at the police and say they should have done more back then, they should have saw it, but please keep in mind, this is 1988. DNA technology is nowhere near where it is today. But as soon as they got the chance to re-examine that evidence and send it off for advanced testing, they did that. So just keep in mind the change in technology and techniques. The Frederick County State's Attorney's Office reviewed the findings, and they issued a formal letter concluding that the evidence supported identifying Ziegler as both the DNA contributor and the person responsible for Delores Thompson's homicide. Now, I know this is a weird way to say it compared to what we usually say in these cases, and this is because Calvin Ziegler died in 2010, so no criminal prosecution is possible. And the police wanted the family to have some sort of closure and to be able to consider this case formally closed. And in order to do that, they needed something from the state's attorney's office to verify that they agreed that this case has officially been solved and closed. And I want to give a huge shout out to the original investigative team from 1988. They had no idea that the evidence they collected and preserved almost 4 decades ago would stand up to the test of time and be able to be used to collect DNA and figure out who was responsible for Delores Thompson's homicide. So a huge shout out to them and a huge thank you, because without their efforts, we would not be here. This case shows why it is so important for victims' families and police departments to have access to some sort of advanced equipment, techniques, and advanced DNA technologies. In this case, the perpetrator is deceased, so there's no real justice for the family. But it did give them some sort of closure because it gave them an answer. And that's our case for today. Leave me a comment about what you think about anything in this case or advanced DNA technologies or anything else, because I really want to know what you think. And be sure to follow along for more true crime case analysis. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.